All right, so let's begin with the end in mind. When you are done with today's activity, I would like you to be connected to my lab remotely. That's a technology that we've gone to set up for your benefit. If there's a problem with it, it may be because you're at D127. As far as I know, that's the only one that's got a problem right now. That's District 127. Don't know why I'm not hearing people talking. Yep, so if 22 is already being used, then you got to find another machine. 22 may have been the one you were using, but you can use a different one. So Foster, I don't know, you can maybe switch to a different account on your Chromebook. That might help, might not, I don't know. But I see quite a few people that are in. So here's what I'm going to do is let's begin with the end in mind. I'm going to click on the activity that's due tomorrow. And there's one today, which is just to verify that you can use Photoshop, etc., with your cloud account. That one should be pretty quick. We already did that last week. As long as you're attached to the Creative Cloud, you don't have to install anything. I want you to get that done. The next thing that's on the calendar for this week already is the activity that's due tomorrow. And what you're going to do is you're just going to build a jack-o'-lantern, no painting. Some people have started to paint already and they're getting a little ahead of themselves. So at the end of the day, you should have the basic shape of a jack-o'-lantern. You do not need to make a turntable movie, but this student did. The way that you're going to do that is using software that's here in our lab called Mudbox, and I'm going to walk you through that process. If we take a look at the instructions for this activity, it gives you an overview of the steps. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. And one of the things it says is following the instructions for Splash Top, connect to the lab remotely. And I'm going to do a demo today. Let me just double check again and see how we're doing on people that are connected. We've got 1, 2, 3. Well, I'll just do this. I'm going to change this to details and click on student name. And what I've got is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 names listed. A couple of people may have connected twice. It looks like Jacob Wagner's on 2 machines. It looks like Alex is on 2 machines. So just to make it easier on yourself, I would suggest you only connect to 1 machine at a time. And I don't know who's on 22. But there are still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more machines available for you. And I can see what people are on. Some people have started Mudbox. Some people have checked Google Classroom. All right. So it takes a minute for your login to get going when you first connect. Oh, so Gio's on 22. For some reason, it wasn't showing your name in this screen. It'll probably refresh in a little bit. So you're going to use our lab and our software in our machine, but you're going to use your mouse and your keyboard using the Splash Top application. You're going to save your work on the drive letter H. H is in home. And for a student who's logged in, if they went to their My Computer icon, or if you open a File Explorer, you'll see that you have a C drive. Then you have a drive that has your student ID number, such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so just for demonstration purposes, I see the person that's on machine number 2, Peter. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to show that he is looking at his file drives here. And on his drives, he can see that there is a C drive, and he'll also see, for some reason, the screen's not showing up. Let me see. Am I in control? I don't want to do control. I just want to do a view. Stop viewing and remote controlling. Let me make these extra large. Let's see if I can do it this way. I'm getting a black screen when I try to see it, which is unusual. Nonetheless, the H drive is where you want to save your work. That was the point I wanted to talk about. You'll also find that you've got a lot of possible things you could run on these machines, including the Unreal Engine. But because it's Halloween week, I'm going to have us first turn a sphere, change the geometry into a jack-o'-lantern. And then tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to add the color. And the end result's going to be a sphere that's been turned into a jack-o'-lantern. The jack-o'-lantern will be carved and painted, and we're going to build a 360-degree rotation short movie showing this carving that you've done using the software here. Here's the thing is the criteria, basically the rubric is you're going to start with a sphere and pay attention to this next step. I'm going to show it to you again, but just listen for a minute. You're going to use Shift D to add some extra detail 3 different times, not less, not more. You don't want to spam that key. You're going to crash the system. Doesn't matter if you're here or there. We're going to add just that many polygons. And we're going to take this totally round shape. We're going to flatten the bottom. We're going to add a stem on top. We're going to add bulges around the edges so it looks more pumpkin-like. You can use some stencils. I'll demonstrate that to add some details. And that's what I want done in the first day. You'll save that work on your H drive. Tomorrow we'll pick up with that and we'll work with it further. Okay? I do want to make sure that you rotate the object around and look at it from different angles. If you can't run Splash Top, if you can't get into the lab, D127, I'm talking to you, then what I want you to do is use any other paint or 3D software that you might have access to on any of your machines and work on a pumpkin machine, or pumpkin project, pardon me. So everyone should be able to make some type of a digital jack-o'-lantern, be it 2D or 3D. Ideally, it's going to be the 3D one. I do have a YouTube video with a similar demo from earlier in the day that's posted, but I'm going to repeat the steps here so that you can be interactive. Could I get a mic check from somebody? I just want to make sure if somebody says something that I can hear you. Could I get
Hello.
Hello, good. All right, so if you want to interrupt me because I might not be looking at the screen, thank you for that. You can open your mic. Logan, if you've got Mudbox installed, you can work on your own machine, but it will make it easier maybe to turn in if you're on our machines. Also, the versions will be the same across the way. So I don't know if that answered your question. Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start Mudbox. I'm going to keep this thing going where it does a little bit of a recording, and I'll try to post this later. And to do so, I'm going to click on the Start button, which if you're not sure what that is on a Windows machine, in the lower left-hand corner, it looks like 4 boxes. It's the Windows logo. So from there, I'll start typing MUD for Mudbox. And every machine in the lab should have Mudbox on it. One exception might be number 7. Came to light earlier today that number 7, for whatever reason, doesn't have a shortcut to it. You're going to see some splash screens. One you're going to see before this will be, which shortcut keys do you want to use? Go ahead and use the default Mudbox keys. And the reason that is all the tutorials and the documentation are going to use the standard keys. And you're not advanced enough in my mind to be saying, no, I want to use the keys for Maya or for 3ds Max, because this is a new tool. If it gets to be too overwhelming with multiple shortcuts on multiple systems, at that point you can consider which ones you want to keep. But for now, use the default ones. I left a couple of these screens up. They are temporary. I just want you to know that they come up. You can choose to not see them in the future. I'm going to click OK on this one, and I'm going to stop at this point, which is a welcome screen. If you see any other options that require you to click OK and there's no other option, just click OK. I'm just giving Peter's screen a chance to kind of get to where I'm at, and I figure if he's at that screen, some of the rest of you are as well. So this is a view of Mudbox, and in Mudbox you've got, pretty similar to a lot of other tools, first and foremost, I want to point out at the top there's an option for help. Now I can't click on anything yet because this welcome screen is here. And in the welcome screen, I'm going to use my head to point out on this far right-hand side, there's some recent files where I've been working with some jack-o'-lanterns, pumpkins actually. There's some basic shapes that you can start with. There is a whole series of navigation and similar quick getting started. Offline, when you're doing your own work, when I'm not with you, go through those and learn the basics of working in Mudbox. It's not a major part of the class, but it can be a relatively fun one because I don't grade you on the quality of your art, and it's kind of fun. It's like playing with Play-Doh. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, so what I want to point out is on this screen here, there's an option to grab a sphere. which is a type of mud. Okay, that's why it's called Mudbox. If I grab a sphere, this gives me a piece of mud that I can work with. If you got to a point where you don't have that on screen, if you click on the word File, New Scene, and I'm not going to save this, I get that same option on a new scene. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and make sure I've got a sphere to start with. Now, using public chat, give me some ideas what I might need to do. And yes, you can steal the words from the assignment I went over a minute ago. What do you need to do to change this sphere into a jack-o'-lantern? So I'm looking for you to type or talk. How do we change a sphere to be a pumpkin first? First, we're going to make a pumpkin. Anyone name any of the things I want? Good. We're going to add a stem. That's a great idea. Indent the top and bottom. Very good. And if you have one in the room or you have access to one, it's going to help you to remember what one looks like, even if it's a plastic one. We're just talking about the shape. We're going to sculpt today. We're not going to paint. Splash top password. So you're using the same password for your email to get into single sign-on. So whatever you use to get into email, it's the same to get into there. All right, so the first thing you're going to do here, and that's in the steps, is you want to add some detail. Now, if you look closely at my screen, you'll see a couple of different grids. The one in the background is actually called a grid. And the grid kind of provides a base. It's almost like a floor, but it goes right through the middle of your geometry. So if the can was the model, that grid would go right through it about midway. And it kind of gives you a way to orient yourself with that object. It would be flat. The next thing is a wireframe. And I have the wireframe on right now, which probably is on yours as well. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to do D. And as I do so, you're going to see that the wireframe changes a little bit. And I want to do that a total of 3 times. So I'm at level 3. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, it says level 3. And now I've got a polygon count that's going to allow me to work and create some smooth topography. I see someone's typing here. And I'm going to take a quick look and see what's going on in the lab to see how people are doing here. I do have a view of this. Students here, I'm going to change my view to see multiples. All right, I see some people are starting to work with their mud. That's great. It's not a race. Work at your own pace. Make sure you do add 3 levels of detail. You'll be much happier if you do that. So if you're just getting set up, make sure that you start Mudbox. I'm going to change this to details for a minute. This is great because without having to share your screen, I can see who's logged in. I can see what they're running. I can see what machine they're on. So this is going to give us a great advantage over using conferences where you have to share your screen, because I can see it pretty much all the time whenever I look. So Stephanie, it's hold down Shift and touch the D key. That would be to add the 3rd level. And if you watch in the upper right-hand corner over here, you'll eventually get to 3 levels of detail. Did that answer your question for you? Alexander, hit the escape key when you see a black screen and see if you can bring up the password screen. Okay, so it's possible. Let's look at the word display here. There's a shortcut to hide meshes here. I'm showing you on my screen. If you click on the word display and make sure meshes hasn't been turned off by mistake. Because if you turn off meshes, it'll disappear. All right, so up at the top where it says display, make sure that you don't have meshes turned off. because if I do that, it turns off the mud. If I do this, it turns it back on. Let me see if I can see the screen you're on, and I might be able to help you figure it out. I'm going to switch over to my view here, and I see it. I see the muddy ball. Are we good again? I think we're good. This is the machine you're logged on to. It looks good. No? You don't see that? I see a few people are typing, and that's good. I'll look at 14 for you. All right, so I'm going to switch back from there to view the whole thing. And the question was, is 14 a black screen? I'm going to look at 14. 14's on Program Manager. There's 14 is a black screen. Let me see if I can hit the escape key myself by doing a remote control here. So 14, I'm remote controlling and I'm not getting it to wake up. 14 might have a problem that I'm unable to reset. Feel free to log off of the machine and start another one. Disconnected and reconnected. Thank you, Peter. Okay, so you're seeing a window labeled Trace and Debug. Let me see if I can see that. 27. I wonder if your system might have crashed stuff. It's okay if it did. If you have Trace and Debug, that sounds like it crashed. Let me make sure I'm on the right machine. Number 12. Oh, I still have 14 selected. My mistake. Let me go to 27 here. There's 27. Whoa. Yeah, I don't see your mud anymore. So let's do this. Click on the word file if you can. If you can. If you can't, we'll have to have you restart this. And let's do a new scene. Control N. There you go. We don't have to save it, so don't save is fine. And if you scroll down in that middle part and find sphere, we'll start with a new sphere. So it's below cube by maybe 1 or 2. There's the sphere. Let's try one of those, please. And at this point, if you hold down Shift and press D and watch the upper right-hand corner, you should see a prompt that said, added 1 level. There you go. Now you're on level 2 one more time, and you'll be at level 3. Perfect. Nicely done. Everything's fine. It didn't get rid of the window. Can you close the window? I don't see the window, so I'm not sure if you're seeing more than one view here. I'll see if I can track down what machine you're on in the lab and see if there's a second monitor hooked up to number 27. I'm going to step out in the lab, see if I can fix what's going on with Stephanie's here. Number 27. 27. 27's a silver case. I got to find that one. All right, sorry that took so long. So some of the settings on. Okay, Logan, check for the recording later. There's a setting somewhere within Splashtop, and I apologize, I'm not an expert with it, where you can turn on the mirroring of the display. Okay, cool. Stephanie, I can't see the message that you see, so I'm not sure how to advise you on that one. If you want us to connect to a different machine, I don't think it'll happen again. And really all we've done is started Mudbox, said new scene, and started with the sphere and added 3 levels of detail. So no harm, no foul. If you want to repeat those steps, you'll be right back where we are right here. Okay. Let me take a look now at, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I'm going to go to a new screen here, and I just want to do a reality check on this. I'm going to start a poll, and I'm going to do a custom poll. So where are we at? I want to find out, how are people doing? Ideally, you are connected and you're able to use Mudbox. Some people might be connected and they have issues using Mudbox. Some people are not connected. So I think that might be 2 people from D127. And there's 2 people that they're just not sure what's going on. So this is a private response. I'm just trying to figure out where are people at. This is a new technology. I'm not expecting it to be perfect. So waiting for a response from 1 person, please. Okay. And this is something different, I know. Okay. I'm going to publish those results just so you see the numbers there. Let's see if I can help you out. If you're not connected for some reason, and I'm sorry if you're not, I want to make sure you get the help that you need. And if you're not in D127, I'm not sure what the issues are, but we do have, if we scroll down here, I'll zoom in a little bit just so we can see. And then use the hand to move over there. So we do have 13 people that are connected. 1's having an issue. 2 are not connected, and 2 are kind of lost. So if you feel like you're lost or you don't know, please make sure this is all going to start with the instructions that came in an email. And the email I was showing a little bit earlier, should be able to follow those. They work well enough for 13 people to get connected. So hopefully that will help you. Got a public chat message here. Okay, so if you say you don't know what you're doing, that's okay. Did you get connected to a computer? Because I think you said you're on number 22. And did you have any luck starting Mudbox? I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Because yeah, I'm just introducing a new system here, so there's a lot of new stuff here. It's okay if you don't know what's going on. If you feel like you're maybe a little bit lost, it's okay. So I'm inside of Mudbox now, which is running on a computer here at Tech Campus, and many of you are using that as well with your own mouse and keyboard. It's a lot easier with the mouse. So this is the first time we're showing a 3D view of an object, and I want to point out in the upper right-hand corner of your screens, there's a cube in effect. And a cube has got the word front as well as the word top, as well as the word, I think, left and then right and bottom. So this view cube, they call it, is common throughout a lot of 3D tools. And I'm going to manipulate that. I'm going to click on the word front, and it snaps my model so that you can see the front perspective of it. If trying to grab some. Here we go. Let's grab something I can turn upside down without it causing chaos here. This perhaps could be an object which is in the same view as the view cube. Now, the view cube in this example is in a corner of the screen, so it's not necessarily embedded, but the same idea holds true. And if I look at the top of the object, the cube will tumble to show me that the cube has changed as well as the object, and same with the bottom. So I'm just going to show you the use of going from a straight-on view to using the view cube in the upper corner to look at the top and the bottom. Now, very accurately, somebody mentioned in order to change this sphere into something that looks more like a pumpkin, we're going to want to flatten the bottom. So this is a sculpting operation. And if you had a piece of clay, sure, you might be able to just throw it on the table and it would flatten the bottom. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the bottom of my sphere, and I'm going to look in the lower left. So I've just changed this view cube up here by my head that says bottom. And if I look over in this corner here where it says Sculpt Tools, you'll see that there is a tool which is called Flatten, and it has, I'll put my neck right above it, it has two red arrows looking like they're pushing in. So when I'm looking at the bottom and I have the Flatten tool selected, there's two considerations for these tools. Well, three that are very common with sculpting. One of them is basically how hard you're pushing on the tool. The other is how big the tool is. And the third one is whether you're using a mirror so that whatever you do on one side also happens on the other side of that mirror. So there's three things to consider right now. If I look on the right-hand side, I'm going to move my head over in that direction. My size is about the middle. My strength, I'm going to move to about the middle. And my mirror is off. And that's what I'm going to use when I work on like the top or bottom of the spheres. I'm going to have the mirror off for the most part. As I hover my mouse right over the middle, there's an outline of a brush. It's a black line. When I click the button and move around in either a circular or semicircular, clockwise or counterclockwise fashion, I can actually flatten the geometry there using the tool. So once I've swirled around a little bit, it's hard to appreciate. We're looking at a representation of a 3D object. Now that I've flattened out an area, I want to actually go back to the view cube and look from the side and see if when I look at the profile, you can get an appreciation for what was a rounded object now has a flattened bottom. So I'm also going to want to do the same thing on the top. I'm going to want to flatten it. And so I'm going to flatten the top as well. Kind of avoiding the middle a little bit here. In fact, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to start over with a smaller brush and a greater strength. So what I've done is over in this corner here, I'm still on the flatten tool, and I've made the size smaller and the strength higher. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to avoid the middle where the stem's going to be, and I'm going to flatten around the edges of it. So I'm purposely leaving a gap in the middle where I can actually create my stem as time goes on. The more that I get out from the center, the more I'm going to be, in effect, flattening over to that point. Now I'm going to look back at the side view, and it's very subtle, but there is a raised portion, which when I put it in the light, you can see where there's a raised portion that could be the base of a stem. All we've done so far is flatten the top and the bottom with 3 levels of detail. And if you're that far right now, you're doing perfect. Is there any questions? Please ask if you have a question. Now there's a number of tools here, and I'm not saying this is the best way, but I'm going to use this for demonstration purposes. You could grab or pinch, but what I want to show is the one next to flatten that's called foamy. And if you hover over it, you'll see it says it's for initial shape forming. So I'm going to click on this foamy, and I'm doing my initial shape. I'm going to do the initial shape of a stem. And it's basically like you're flooding more clay on top of it. So you'll notice again with the tool foamy selected, I'm going to use similar size and strength. I'm actually going to bring the strength up. And if I hover over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build up some clay by using this foamy to just start to build a stem. Always a good idea to check your work from a different perspective and see how that looks. So that works for me. I've got a stem on top by doing foamy. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to want to make the sphere look as though it's got bulges or channels or ridges. People describe the sides of a jack-o'-lantern many different ways, pumpkin I should say. The lines in the middle tend to be thinner than the bumps on the outside, but I'm not worried about the specifics. I just want you to get some experience at adding those bumps or ridges. So now I'm going to go to the front. I'm clicking on F for front so that I'm locked on one face of this object. And I'm going to introduce a third tool that you're using here. We're going to use bulge. Sorry, I lost track of where it was. I'll move my head over there to show you where it is. So I've got my neck right above the bulge tool, and if you do a float over on that, the bulge tool inflates the area under the brush by pushing it out along its own. Basically, it puffs it out, okay? And it follows the edges. It's not going to puff it out like an arm. It's going to puff it out along the same edges. Paying attention now to the size of your brush compared to the overall size of the sphere, think about how wide you might want these bulges to be. Start near the top, but don't overlap the stem, and rotate down. Take a look from the side. That's rather redonkulous, isn't it? So I'm going to do Control Z to turn it off, and I'm going to move my strength down to less than half and just see what that looks like. So what I've done here is I've added a bulge. It's much more subtle because I changed the strength, and I'm pretty happy with that. I actually was going to do an undo here just to show you again. If you don't like it, just click on undo. Control Z, and I'm going to move my size up a little bit, and I'm going to move my strength down a little bit. Because I want to do all of it around the edges, there's a method of putting a mirror in the middle so that what you do on one side happens on the other side. I mentioned it before. Now I'm going to actually turn this mirror on, and I'm going to use it on the X, which means whatever I do on one side of the mirror is going to be copied on the other. So with the mirror on, if I start up here and I drag something around the sides, you'll see even though I'm only working on the one side, it actually balloons out the other side as well. So I'm setting in place here some bulges. And so I've got that chamfered or bubbled look. Now I don't have an even number here, and if I wanted to make it more divisions, I could. But this is giving the idea of a pumpkin. That's all I'm looking for. Another option for you is to add further details using the thing in the lower right-hand corner. They're called stamps and stencils, and they have different uses, and I'm going to show you a stencil because it's an easy way to add some detail to your sculpting. To be honest, this is what I want you to do today. A sphere has got a flattened bottom and top with the stem coming out of it, and it's got bulges or ridges. That's it. To turn this in, you do a snipping tool, and you turn it in through the Google Classroom. What I'm going to do now is show you how to do a little bit more, because I know some of you are going to enjoy this and you're going to play with it. Don't be a perfectionist. Get it this far and you're done. Because this is a good stopping point, I'm going to do a save, and I'm going to suggest you do the same thing. In the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to click on File, and I'm going to do a Save Scene. Please use the path H as in home to save your work. So save your work on the H drive. I don't have an H drive, so I've got to save mine here. I'll call this Jack third session start. So So I just model this interactively, so to speak, with you. Yes, I will repeat how to flatten and rise and stuff. I just saw that as a question. The sculpting tools are in the lower left-hand corner over here where it says Sculpt. The one that I use first is called Flatten. The one I did to add the top is called Foamy. And the one that I did to add the ridges is called Bulge. Whenever you select one of the sculpting tools, and I'll go back to Flatten here, you'll want to play with 3 settings, and they're over in the upper right-hand corner here: size, strength, and mirror. So if I'm on the bottom and I'm using the Flatten tool, when I move my mouse around, it will flatten the bottom. And if I check my work from the side, you can see the effect of that. So I flatten the bottom. Did that help? I saw there was a question about that. I'm glad you're asking questions today. Questions are awesome. Saving is done by clicking on the word File and then Save Scene. And you want to save it on the H drive. And if you look at the My Computer icon, I'll have to do a Save As to bring this up. You'll want to put in, you'll want to save it on your H drive. Now, I don't have an H drive. Yours is going to have a number here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's your network drive. And give it a name and save it there. I could save this on a different drive letter where everybody can get to it. So I'll save this here. And if somebody needs, because they're totally lost, to start out with this and then improve it from there, they can. Anybody ever looked at the bottom of a jack-o'-lantern wherever it's been sitting and noticed that sometimes it has a yuckiness because it was on the ground? If you haven't, the bottom of a jack-o'-lantern is not necessarily pretty. So I'm going to use a stencil to add some details. This is optional, but it's something worth showing you. And if I click on the word stencil over here, you can see an overlay. This one looks like, I guess, a lizard, maybe a lizard skin to me. This one looks scratched up. This one is a general noise type effect. And so you can click amongst these and you'll see an overlay. And if you're happy with the overlay, in terms of the pattern, and this one looks almost like bark, I can model through this to add that definition. So now I've activated a stencil in the lower right-hand corner. And you'll notice that there's a pop-up that tells me if I use the letter S in the middle mouse button, I can actually move this thing around. So I can move the stencil if I like this part of the stencil better or that part. I can also use S and the left mouse button to scale it, to make it larger or smaller. So I'm going to move it again. And I can rotate it using S and the other button. So if I've lined up a stencil, any tool that I put to it is going to be affected. So now I'm going to use Foamy with the stencil in place. Because I'm on the bottom, I don't want the mirror on. So over here where I've got the mirror, I'm going to turn that off because I don't want it to happen across there. And I'm going to go ahead and add that effect on the bottom. I'm going to turn the stencil off. And it's imperfect, but you kind of get the idea that that pumpkin was sitting somewhere that its bottom's a little bit less even. You can do the same thing, for example, on the stem. If I were to move my tool, actually my stencil, I should say. I'm going to move the stencil. I'm going to rotate it. Remember to touch S if you want to work with your stencil. I can actually work on a different part. Now, moving around your object is different than moving the stencil around. There is things called pose tools where you could actually, for example, move an object. So I'm going to move the object. so that I can get to the stencil a little bit better. And I'm going to move the stencil so that it's on top of it. And using that stencil in a sculpt tool of foamy, I'm going to add some details on my stem. So I'm working through the stencil. I'm adding some details on the stem. That stencil looks more organic than just a straight edge. And I can change the position of the stencil. Just got to remember what the shortcuts are, or use the ones that show up on screen. And I can add some details to my stem. I'm not looking for perfection here. I'm looking for a relative effort. I'm going to add a different stencil to the top to try to make this look a little bit more organic. I'm just going to scale it. If I line this up, I might be able to put kind of a speckly top on top of the stem here. Yeah, it's not bad. I haven't painted at all. All I've done is tried to make it a little bit raggedy up on the top like a stem. Same thing could be done with a different stencil as you use your bulge tool. So this should be fun as long as you're not a perfectionist. So if it's not fun, I think you're being too hard on yourself, because I'm seriously not grading you on your art. I'm just trying to get you to have some fun here by working with these sculpt tools. And I'm just using some of the other tools here to add some details, because pumpkins tend to be a little bit bumpy. So what I've decided to do is grab this wax tool. And I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just adding some imperfections on the jack-o'-lantern. So when you grab a jack-o'-lantern, it tends not to be smooth. It's not that hard to keep hold of them because they've got all these imperfections on them. What's great about me showing you guys art tools is I'm such a horrible artist. I'm just a hack, and some of you are going to be more careful and end up with better versions, which I'm sure is refreshing to you. Oh, see, look at that. I just did a smooth one. Control Z. I really want to use the stencil there. Get that to work right. I've done a handful of these over the past few years, so part of it is practice. But I've also learned, to be honest with you, from some of the students that have been in class here. When somebody clicks with this, they end up doing some pretty cool things. And if you look on YouTube under Mudbox speedruns, some of the things people do with this tool are just phenomenal. All right, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to click on File and do a save. Turn off this. And I'd like to show you how to make that 360-degree movie just so you've seen it once. I don't require you to turn it in this way, but some people are interested in it. Yep, the H drive is just called your number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example. It doesn't actually have the letter H on it. Sorry, I didn't see that question until just now. So now I'm going to turn off this grid that I mentioned before by clicking on the word display up here. And I'm also going to turn off the wireframe. The wireframe is something that gives us the details of the polygons, but it's not really showing me the actual object itself. And now I can pose this object within the scene so that it's not too high and not too low. And now that I got a view of the pumpkin, before I've added color, before I've done any carving, I've got it saved. Ensure that by doing save. I want to create a 360-degree view of this, a rotation. And it's built right into the tool. This is super cool. Click on the word render, and I go to create turntable movie. I'm leaving that up for a minute because I want people to see where this is. Save your work, go to the top where it says render, and select create turntable movie. This will give you a view of, let's see, click on render, create turntable movie. You can leave all the defaults. It's going to automatically take a picture, rotate your model, take a picture, rotate your model, and create a little movie showing it in the round. So when I click on create, it asks where to save it. This would be another example where you want to save it on your H drive. So I'm just going to copy this path here so I keep track of it. This is the third session rotation demo. So it takes a minute for it. I see a spinning blue circle, but all of the processing is being done here at Tech. And when it's done, you'll get a notification that the turntable render is done, and you can open it up. Screenshot's perfect. Good, Stephanie. I'm glad to hear that. So I do want you to play with it today, play with it tomorrow, and everything that we do with this is really a play thing. We're not artists. We're just doing this so that we understand the concepts. It's a zero risk for you to work on this. So let's take a look now. I'm going to take a look in my folders. Stem, bottom, pumpkin, bump look. Yep. So here I've got my third session rotation demo. I'm going to open that up. This was done by Mudbox. Based on what I did, it created a 360-degree movie that I could put into my portfolio. I could post it to my YouTube site. I could show off that I've been able to model a pumpkin. Now the pumpkin later will be a jack-o'-lantern with color, but that's just as far as I wanted to get today. You don't have to turn in the rotation movie if you don't want to. I'm going to show you some of them from today. I'm going to grab a bunch of them, and I'm just going to open them all up so that when one finishes, it goes to another one. So this is a variety of ones that I've used for demonstrations in the past. You can see in some examples, I've still got the grid showing. It's only two of them showing for some reason. Should have a little playlist that shows these. Let's try that again. Go back in here, grab them all, and we'll add these to a playlist. There we go. So this one I did a little bit more work with shooting the color through a stencil. This is the one I just did here. This is one where the grid was left on to show people what that looked like. This is both the grid as well as the man, I can't think of the word. The grid lines as well as the I'm missing the word. It's in the options here. So these are all examples. Some have gone actually too far with them. These are all things that we worked on today. And none of them look the same. And they're all fine. All right, I'm going to escape out from that. I wonder how many people are still connected to the lab and what's going on there. So I'm going to change my view to see. And we got people that are working on making pumpkins. That's awesome. Some people have gone a little further than I wanted. See, already I see examples that are better than mine. Yeah, don't be a rush to paint, because once you start painting, then modeling becomes a different thing. Peter, nicely done. I like yours. So if you can get a hold of a pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern and take a good look at it, that would be a reference image. You'd probably find that you get a better handle on it. Giant cardboard. It's okay. This is the first thing you ever make is pretty much throwaway. We bought a waffle iron when I was growing up as a kid. My mom bought a waffle iron, and the instructions said the first waffle that you make should be thrown away because there could be factory Teflon or whatever on it. So the first waffle, we were going to throw it away, but food was tight for us, so we fed it to the dog. And no lie, the dog ate the waffle and he did a backflip. He's never done a backflip before. He never did a backflip after then, but there was some kind of weird reaction that dog had, and he did a backflip. True story. From the waffle. I don't know. Life is funny sometimes. That's a good memory. All right. I'm going to take a look out here at the Google Classroom and see how we're doing on people that are turning things in. Look at that. I got 2 ways to see who's on the lab and what they're doing. This is great. It's really great. So if I jump into the Google Classroom just to see how it's going for tomorrow, student work. Remember, usually I get half of the students turning something in on time. So if I get anywhere near that, I'm happy based on whatever's going on in people's lives. Turned in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 people have turned it in already. So, 9. Got 20% of the people have turned it in already. That's great. That's all I need. Turn in what you got. Don't perfect it. I'm going to stay online for questions, but I'm going to stop recording for now. Okay, question was asked, how do I turn in? The simplest way to do that would be to open Google Classroom from the computer that you're logged into, which is pretty trippy, but yeah, it's like you're here at Tech. So what you're going to do is, in addition to Mudbox, you're going to open Google Classroom. You're going to attach work, click on the word upload, and you grab it from your H drive, and you actually attach whatever you want to turn in. All I need is a snipping tool version of it. So snipping tools built into the computers. If you're looking at Mudbox, you can start. So watch my screen for a minute, please. I'm going to start SNI for starting the snipping tool. And when the snipping tool comes up, it basically lets me select part of the screen. And when I've got my work there, I can then save it. And you're going to save it on your H drive. Kind of where Mr. Jacks used to have you have a Dropbox, but I don't use a Dropbox. And then from there, you would just call it like a screenshot of pumpkin. And now I've got a file I can attach. You'd go into the Google Classroom. And when you went to turn in your work, in fact, I'll just attach this as an example here. I don't have the same ability to like act as a student, but what I can do here is show you what that looks like. If you click on the word add, file, the option you want is called upload, and then you can click on browse. I'm going to go right to the H drive again. And now I can't remember what I called it. Well, if I go to the H drive and then click on date modified, there it is, start of pumpkin. All right, click on open there. It's uploaded. So now I can save that. And if people look at the assignment, there'll now be an example that shows a screenshot of the pumpkin that was started. So there's a sample attached. So a screenshot's using a tool called the snipping tool. And so to start the snipping tool, you click on the start button over here. and it's built into Windows, so it's SNIP for snipping tool. SNIP. The snipping tool actually lets you say you want to do a new part of the snip. And you don't have to do the whole thing. I mean, I'm going to do a snipping tool right here on this little image here. And that grabs part of the screen, and then you click on Save. And when you save it, make sure you put it on the H drive. And call it teeny tiny pumpkin, because it's a teeny tiny pumpkin image. And then I can attach that file to the activity and turn it in that way. Okay. I will, you know what I can do? I recorded this whole thing. I can post this to YouTube as well. So, and then they're out there for a long time. So, should I post this recording to YouTube? Looks like it. Okay. I got a few yeses. Yeah. Yeah. So 10 people say, yep, go ahead, publish it out. So I'm going to stop this recording now.